Welcome to our studio, Cathy.
Thank you, Farzana. It's a real pleasure to be with you.
Same here. So, Thread is your first documentary, and it's a short documentary. First of all, what is that led you to make a film on Bangladeshi artist Suraya Rahman?
Yes. Well, it's very interesting because had someone said to me that I would be making a film about Bangladesh 5-10 years ago, I wouldn't have imagined it. But when we lived in Bangladesh for 2 years, I just loved the country and its people. And every weekend we would go somewhere to the villages and look at craftspeople. And this really became under our skin. But how it happened about Suraya Rahman, that we even knew about her, was before we were moving to Bangladesh, I went to the Textile Museum of Toronto. And in the Textile Museum of Toronto gift shop, I asked them about Bangladesh textiles. And they said that if I could ever find a gray-haired woman in Bangladesh who made incredible embroideries, that I should talk with her, that I should look for her. And of course, we didn't have her name, we didn't know anything about her.
Oh, wow.
Other than a little bit of what she looked like. So when we lived in Bangladesh, we just kept our eye out in the villages, anywhere. Who is this gray-haired woman? And finally, one day, we saw this magnificent piece of art at a school craft fair. There were people from many villages selling things. And there was a young woman there, and she was selling this Nakshikata tapestry. And we said, "Did you make this?" "Yes." "Who's your teacher? Does she have gray hair?" And she said, "Yes, she has gray hair."
আমাকে দিল প্রজেক্ট ডিজাইন, আমি ডিজাইনে বসলাম। সে ডিজাইন একের পর এক, মহরম থেকে লাঠি খেলা থেকে নৌকা বাইচ থেকে সব কিছু শুরু করলাম। আমি করেছি কখনকার, যখন আমি দেখেছি ছোটবেলায়, সেই পৌষ মেলা করেছি। এখনকার পৌষ মেলা করিনি। ওগুলো নিয়ে বিক্রি করছেন, আর মুসলমানরা পিঠা তৈরি করছেন, বিক্রি করছেন।
And so this is how we found Suraya.
There's so many gray-haired people in Bangladesh, you know that, right?
Yes, and this was so remarkable because in fact the women with whom Suraya worked in her home, and they were very far from, out being in a shop. They had no shop or anything like that. So it was almost like a miracle that we found them, but that's how we started. And then a few years later, we were in Halifax, working in Halifax, and the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design asked us if we could do an exhibition of Bangladesh textiles. So we took what we had in our cupboards and we took it to the museum and to the art gallery of the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design, and they put all of our Bangladesh textiles in the gallery, and they had record attendance. And then one of the professors later said to me, "Whatever happened to that woman whose, textile was at the end of the gallery?" And we said, "Well, we're just not sure." She said, "Please don't let her stories go to waste. Those stories are so beautiful. Make a documentary." And that's how we started.
Oh, wow. That's a fascinating story.
Well, it's been now 5 years we've been working on this documentary, and it all started with that inclination, and every time we move forward through all of the struggles of making a documentary and all of the high points, it's those people of Bangladesh that we met all those years ago when we lived there, and the spirit of Bangladesh that keeps us going.
So you said you used to live in Bangladesh, so is it for any work purpose, or what's the reason?
Yes, my husband was posted to Bangladesh to work for the U.S. Embassy.
Okay.
And I worked for the United Nations Development Program. But each time that we went on a weekend somewhere else in the country, we traveled throughout the country, we usually looked at the craft of the women. That was my particular interest.
How was the journey of filmmaking?
Well, it was quite a journey for Zana because, as I mentioned, we were 5 years making this film, and when we first started to make the film, Soraya was actually not well. And so we really had to race against time because we wanted to be sure that she'd have a chance to tell all the stories. And at first we thought that we'd be making a story about art and this exquisite art that these women of Bangladesh had made. This art is now all over the world in collections and museums, and for example, even the royal collection of Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
I didn't know about that.
Yes, it's in several museums in the world. And the government of Bangladesh used to present this as gifts to visiting presidents and visiting royalty. And so we have no idea, but many of them around the world probably have it in their collections. But in order to make the film, we were racing against time to get Soraya's story and also the women's story, but more so, we needed to find the art. And to find the art, we had to search around the world. We didn't physically go there, but we asked Soraya if she had any idea who maybe bought her art or who was in Bangladesh at the time we could talk with. And so what she told us is maybe she'd give us a name, and then we'd Google it or we'd try and find that person, and then we'd talk with them. And if they had a piece of art, we'd ask if they could photograph it. We'd verify it with Soraya, and then if it was her art and the art of these women, we would put it in the film. And so one story I'd like to share with you about that, it was just one of those things on the journey when you think, oh, is this too tough to make this documentary? And then something really miraculously happens and you say, this is the journey I'm supposed to be on. Well, this happened in Ottawa, Canada, and I was visiting a high school girlfriend, and she had just moved into a remote part of Ottawa. And there was a strip mall restaurant down the street, and we said, let's go to this restaurant. Just a few corner stores and this wonderful little restaurant. And as we walked in, I saw Bengali spices were listed on the restaurant. So we talked with the server and said, is someone here from Bangladesh? And is the chef from Bangladesh? He said, no, the chef is not from Bangladesh. The chef is from Quebec. So I said, well, why Bengali spices? And he said, well, my father is from Bangladesh.
Was it a Bengali restaurant?
It wasn't a Bengali restaurant. It was a Mediterranean fusion restaurant.
Okay.
Yes. And so we had no idea it was Bengali. And then he said, the server said, my grandfather was a poet in Bangladesh. And so we said, well, who is it? And he said, Jasimuddin. And we couldn't believe it because we said, well, Soraya made many of her art pieces based on the poetry of Jasimuddin, and they were very close friends with the family. And so we just absolutely couldn't believe it, that in the middle of Ottawa, that we would stumble upon a restaurant. So the next morning, the father took us to his living room and showed us one of the pieces of art that Soraya Rahman had made that was hanging in their living room.
That is amazing. I guess you meant to be making this film.
Yes, well, we certainly think so. And there have been other incidences like that around the world that I will share on our website. If people are interested, over time, if you follow our website, we'll be putting little stories like that up there. When we had this idea about making a documentary, the first thing we thought about is that we would like to consider doing this, but we would want to do it with talent of Bangladesh. We didn't want to find people here and fly them to Bangladesh. We thought there's so much talent in Bangladesh, yet let's use the talent in Bangladesh. So we contacted Catherine Masood. We had known her in Bangladesh, but we'd lost track of Tarek and Catherine, and we found them on Facebook again. And my husband sent Catherine a message and said, we're considering making this film, and could we speak with you about it? And then when we went to Dhaka after that, we sat with Tarek and Catherine, and we watched one of their films together. It was a very wonderful moment, and we talked about this film. and they said, we really appreciate this story and we'll help you, and you should make this film and we'll help you. And so that's how we started.
What are the challenges you face in Bangladesh during your filmmaking?
Well, this is one of the times in my life that I really wish I spoke Bangla because it's I think a huge challenge for us was that we wanted the women to tell their stories, and we wanted part in English but also part in Bangla, and so I had to really try and understand with our editor, you know, what people were saying. And so that was a big challenge, but it's also wonderful language and musical, and so it was lovely to listen to. The other challenge, of course, were that we had to move the filming sessions in and around hartals, because we would often be finding a time when Soraya was feeling well, and then the women could come together, and then there might be a hartal. And so we had to change our filming sessions a number of times. I think the greatest challenge was when we one day got a note that Tarak Masood and Mishuk Munir were killed in a car accident. Mishuk Munir was our primary cinematographer. We were so fortunate to be able to work with him, and he was doing the filming of Soraya and the women. And when we heard this, at first we couldn't believe it, and then we were so shocked and discouraged for quite a period of time. And we waited, of course, for about 6 months until the celebrations of their lives and everyone's remembrances could be, you know, properly thought of. It was a very difficult time for us and, of course, for the families. But Catherine has continued to work with us and works with us to this day.
আমি এখন মনে করতেছি যে ওনার কাছ থেকে যে কাজটা আমরা শিখছি আর এত দিন ধরে 30 বছর ধরে কইরা খাইতেছি সেটাই আমার কাছে বড় পাওনা।
Her greatest contribution was introducing a style and a creative skill that was not there before. And she moved it on to a more sophisticated level.
I was creating and creating and creating. This was my destiny.
What's your future plan with this film?
This film, we originally wanted to make the film to document the stories of Soraya's art. And then when we first interviewed her, we found this incredible story of resilience and hardship and struggle of Soraya and the women, and how art and this Nakshikata helped to empower them and their families and really do work with dignity that has had impact for generations. And so we thought, you know, this is a story in Bangladesh, but there are so many artisans all over the world who need help to generate awareness about their beautiful art and the impact that they have. And so we'd like the film to be able to tell a story not just about the artisans of Bangladesh, but also about the importance of supporting living artisans around the world.
That's great. So do you have any plan to release it or screen it in Bangladesh?
Absolutely. We've wanted to screen it in Bangladesh for some years now, and I think we're going to be taking it to Bangladesh in February. We're just working on that right now.
Awesome.
Yes, there's a Dhaka Arts Summit at that time, and we'd love to screen it in and around that time. And we're just talking with different NGOs and potential sponsors to see how all that can come together. And we're also looking at screening it in other parts of North America and Europe. And again, looking at how we can put this together with partners and sponsors that want to help us bring this message to the rest of the world.
Being a filmmaker, you know, music has a very important role in every film. So how did you select And in your film, it's all Bengali songs. So how did you select the songs? And another question I have that I noticed that the singers you selected, they are from Toronto. So why did you choose singers from Toronto instead of Bangladesh?
Okay, well, those are great questions. And the first thing I should say is that the reason we used music and songs in the film is because Soraya, when we were interviewing her, would talk about how music was so important in her life. So Lalon and all of the great, singers and the great songwriters. So through Catherine Masood and others that we talked with, we were able to find Shajib, who's an incredible composer, singer, songwriter, as you know. And Shajib was not working with so many films anymore, but when he heard this story, he said, yes, I will work on your film. And we were so excited about that. And why the singers are from Toronto is because Shajib was visiting in Toronto at a very critical point in the film when we were getting the music done.
Okay.
And so we would Skype back and forth with him in Toronto, and he'd, play a few tunes and say, how does this sound? And we'd work that out. And then he actually suggested, instead of going back to work with Choir Bangla in Bangladesh and waiting that amount of time, he could put together a group of wonderful Bengali singers in Toronto and form this choir that would actually do the music for the film.
Thank you very much, Cathy. Thread is an amazing film. I already watched it twice. I hope it's gonna have its success. Thank you very much.
Dhanyavad, Zana.
Thank you. Lovely. See, you can speak Bengali.
I can speak some Bengali, yes.
Wonderful.
Thank you.